My wife left me and came back with a baby, begging for a second chance. Am I wrong for shutting the door in her face? You know how people say, I never saw it coming? Well, sitting here in my home office in suburban New Jersey, surrounded by spreadsheets and financial reports, I can tell you that's exactly how it was for me. I'm Isaac Mitchell, a 32-year-old accounting manager, and I never imagined I'd be telling this story. I was married to Lexi, Alexandra Bennett, officially, for 4 years. Looking back now at our WhatsApp chat history, those blue ticks next to messages filled with heart emojis and future plans, I really thought we had it all figured out. We had this whole life mapped out together, complete with a shared Google Calendar that tracked everything from date nights to future family planning. The thing that connected us most was our dream of having children. Lexi would spend hours on Pinterest, creating boards for nursery designs and baby clothes. She'd send me links during work hours. Look at this adorable crib, or what do you think about this color scheme? I'd always pause my Excel sheets to respond, no matter how busy I was with month-end reports. We were that couple who had names picked out, a college fund started, and even a dedicated savings account for future children's expenses. That's the accountant in me, always planning ahead. But life has a way of throwing curveballs at your perfectly organized spreadsheets. After months of trying to conceive, we found ourselves sitting in a sterile doctor's office, staring at charts and numbers that would change everything. Dr. Thompson, with his kind eyes and careful tone, delivered the news that hit me like a system crash during tax season. My sperm count was significantly below normal levels. The chances of us conceiving naturally were minimal. I remember gripping the armrest of that office chair, my knuckles white, as years of planning and dreaming seemed to disappear like a deleted file. The carefully constructed future we had mapped out was suddenly full of error messages, and I had no idea how to debug this particular problem. Initial reaction. At first, Lexi seemed supportive, her WhatsApp messages filled with encouraging words. We're in this together, Isaac. And it doesn't change anything about us. But there was something off in her responses, like a formula that looks right but keeps returning an error. She switched from sending me daily baby-related pins to complete radio silence on the topic. Our shared calendar suddenly had fewer future plans marked. The small changes started piling up like unreconciled accounts. Her Instagram posts became more frequent but felt increasingly disconnected from our reality. While she posted #couple goals photos from our weekend brunches, at home she'd make subtle jabs about my habits. Maybe you should try that new gym near your office, or the neighbors probably think you never leave your desk. I had gained some weight, sure. Stress eating during quarter-end closings will do that. But her comments felt less like concern and more like entries in a growing list of disappointments. Changes in relationship. When I'd try to discuss her changing attitude, Lexi would dismiss it with the same efficiency she used in her marketing presentations. You're overthinking things, she'd say, her tone matching the professional distance she maintained with difficult clients. Everything's fine. But nothing about our relationship balanced anymore. The woman who used to send me random thinking of you messages during her lunch breaks had been replaced by someone who treated our marriage like a struggling business venture. As months passed, I started accepting her assurances like I would accept a client's questionable expense report, with growing doubt but professional courtesy. I stopped pressing the issue, not wanting to appear as unstable as an unbalanced ledger. We fell into a routine that felt more like neighboring office cubicles than a marriage. My attempts to discuss alternatives like adoption or surrogacy were met with the kind of deflection I usually reserved for audit inquiries. I'm happy just being us, she'd say, but her voice carried all the conviction of a rushed quarterly forecast. The departure. Then came the business trip announcement. I've got this amazing opportunity for a marketing conference in California, Lexi announced one evening, showing me the flight details on her phone. She'd taken similar professional development trips before, and I'd always supported her career growth. It was part of our long-term financial planning. We lived in a comfortable suburb of New Jersey, and these conferences were important networking opportunities in her field. I helped her pack, double-checking her travel documents, like I would verify important financial statements. Made sure she had her passport, credit cards, and even downloaded her boarding pass to her phone. I remember driving her to Newark International Airport, the morning traffic on I-95 unusually light. Her last words still echo in my head, delivered with the same polished tone she used in her marketing presentations. "Thanks for always being so supportive, Isaac." That night, I stayed up tracking her flight like I would monitor a crucial wire transfer. United Airlines' website showed her flight had landed at LAX on schedule. I called her cell, expecting to hear about the turbulence over Kansas or complaints about airplane food. But all I got was her professional voicemail message. "You've reached Alexandra Bennett, marketing coordinator at." The realization. Morning came, and still nothing. My analytical mind started running scenarios like risk assessments. I checked our joint account activity. Nothing unusual. Called her phone again. Sent carefully worded WhatsApp messages, watching those gray check marks mock me. After hours of silence that felt longer than a year-end audit, I finally called her best friend, Sophia, who worked at that trendy coffee shop downtown. "What conference?" "Lexi's not traveling with us," Sophia said, confusion evident in her voice. I could hear the espresso machine whirring in the background at her workplace. I just served her usual group their morning lats. The truth hit me like a massive spreadsheet error discovered too late. There was no marketing conference, no business trip, no networking event. My wife had orchestrated her disappearance with the precision of a well-planned marketing campaign, and I had fallen for every detail. The aftermath. Sitting there in my home office, staring at my phone with its unanswered messages, I felt like my entire world had crashed like a corrupted database. The carefully organized life we'd built together suddenly made as much sense as a random number generator. Why would she construct such an elaborate lie? Why disappear without any explanation? I tried to rationalize it like I would a complex financial problem, but no amount of analysis could make this add up. The signs had been there in our digital footprint, her decreasing engagement with our shared plans, the subtle changes in her message timing, the carefully curated social media posts that showed a perfect life while ours was quietly unraveling. I just hadn't wanted to read between the lines of our relationship's ledger. Coming to terms. That first morning of realization, I woke up to an empty bed and the harsh reality that this wasn't just a bad quarterly report I could revise. She was gone. The side of the closet where her designer work clothes used to hang was as empty as a zeroed-out account. All those late-night reassurances I'd given myself. Maybe her phone died. Maybe there's a flight delay. Bounced back like rejected transactions. I spent those initial days in denial, calling her number with the persistence I usually reserved for chasing down missing receipts. I left voicemails that started professional and grew increasingly desperate. "Lexi, please just let me know you're safe, and we can talk about whatever's wrong." But like an email sent to a deactivated account, my messages disappeared into the void. Support system. Eleanor, my mother-in-law, was as blindsided as I was. I found myself at the Bennett's colonial-style house more times than I could count, sitting in their immaculate kitchen while Eleanor tried to make sense of her daughter's actions. She'd cook comfort food, the kind of home-cooked meals I'd been surviving without since Lexi left, and listen as I tried to reconcile the numbers of our relationship, looking for the moment where everything stopped balancing. Emotional struggle. I oscillated between emotions like volatile market trends, anger, despair, self-doubt. Each day brought new questions that I obsessively analyzed like complicated tax returns. Had I missed some critical warning sign? Should I have paid more attention to the changing patterns in our WhatsApp conversations? I'd scroll through old messages, examining timestamps, and read receipts like audit trails, searching for the moment everything started to unravel. My work performance at the accounting firm began to suffer. Spreadsheet errors crept in where I used to be meticulous. During client meetings, I'd catch myself staring at my phone, hoping to see a notification from Lexi. My colleagues would ask about my well-being, with the careful tone usually reserved for discussing budget cuts. I'd deflect with vague responses about personal matters. Admitting my wife had ghosted me felt like confessing to a major accounting error. Social pressure. The constant inquiries from our social circle were like recurring audit findings I couldn't resolve. Questions would pop up at the local grocery store or gym. How's married life? Or, haven't seen Lexi's post lately. Is she busy with work? I'd paste on a smile and give non-committal answers, each interaction feeling like another entry in my growing deficit column. Healing process. Eventually, I found my way to Dr. Roberts, a therapist whose office felt more welcoming than any audit room I'd ever been in. I'd never considered therapy before, but after months of barely functioning, missing deadlines, eating microwave dinners, sleeping in my home office, I knew I needed to recalculate my approach to healing. In that quiet office, I'd talk about everything. The anger that flared up like a failed reconciliation, the betrayal that felt worse than any financial fraud I'd encountered, the emptiness in my house that no amount of overtime could fill. I'd describe my sleepless nights spent reviewing our relationship like a troubled account, looking for the transaction that caused everything to collapse. Self-discovery. Through therapy, I began to understand something crucial. Lexi's departure was her decision, not a reflection of my worth. Like an independent audit finding, no amount of personal checking could have prevented her choice. I'd spent months thinking I was somehow defective, like a flawed financial model, but gradually I started seeing things through a different lens. Looking back, I realized how much of myself I'd lost in our marriage. I'd been so focused on being the supportive husband, maintaining our comfortable suburban lifestyle, that I'd forgotten about my own interests. With newfound free time on my hands, I started rediscovering old hobbies. I joined a local book club, started taking evening jogs through our tree-lined neighborhood, and even experimented with cooking beyond my usual microwave meals. Professional growth. At work, things began improving too. Initially, I was just going through the motions, barely meeting deadlines and making careless errors in my reports. But gradually, I started channeling more energy into my role as accounting manager. I volunteered for challenging projects, mentored junior staff, and eventually earned a promotion that had seemed impossible during my darker days. The gym became my sanctuary, a place where spreadsheets and failed marriages couldn't follow. Between sets, I'd sometimes catch glimpses of my changed reflection in the mirror. The extra weight I'd gained during my marriage had melted away, replaced by a stronger, more confident version of myself. Emotional recovery. Small reminders of Lexi still surfaced occasionally. An old receipt from our favorite restaurant, a forgotten photo in my cloud storage, or a LinkedIn update showing her latest career move. Each discovery would momentarily throw off my balance, like an unexpected variance in an audit. But increasingly, I found myself able to acknowledge these memories without letting them disrupt my reconstructed life. I reconnected with friends I'd lost touch with during my marriage. Weekend golf sessions with my college buddies became a regular fixture in my calendar. Having people around who knew me before I was Lexi's husband helped me remember who I was as just Isaac. The unexpected return. One Saturday morning, while reviewing quarterly reports in my home office, my doorbell rang. Opening the door, I froze like a computer encountering a fatal error. There stood Lexi, looking slightly worn but still polished in her marketing executive way, with a baby in her arms. The sight short-circuited my brain like a power surge through a motherboard. The past year's carefully rebuilt composure threatened to crash as I stood there, staring at this surreal scene on my front porch. She smiled, that same professional smile she used to close marketing deals, as if expecting me to welcome her back like a returning client. "Can I come in?" she asked, her tone casual, as if she'd just returned from a regular business trip. "No," I replied, my voice as firm as a final audit report. "You can stay there and explain." I wasn't about to let her breach the sanctuary I'd rebuilt for myself. My home office visible through the doorway behind me, spreadsheets still open on the dual monitors. The confrontation. She launched into what sounded like a rehearsed marketing pitch. "I know this might come as a shock," she began, bouncing the baby slightly, "but I wanted to come back and explain everything." Her hopeful expression suggested she expected me to be as receptive as a client reviewing a proposal. Standing there in my doorway, part of me wanted to close the door and mark this interaction as spam. But morbid curiosity kept me listening. "I made a mistake leaving," she continued, her voice taking on that persuasive tone she used in her presentations. "I've realized I lost the best thing that ever happened to me." She glanced down at the baby, then back at me. "This is our second chance." The absurdity of her statement hit me like a corrupted Excel file. Here she was, acting as if we could simply restore from a backup, using this child as some sort of system reset button. The truth emerges. "Why did you leave?" I asked, my voice as steady as a balanced ledger, though inside I felt like a system on the verge of collapse. After years of running different scenarios through my mental spreadsheets, I needed to hear her version of the data. She hesitated, her marketing perfect facade flickering like a bad network connection. Finally, she admitted the truth. She'd left because she wanted a child, and found someone who could give her one since I couldn't. She delivered this information like a routine business update, as if she hadn't completely deleted my life's happiness.txt file. The man she left with, she explained, hadn't stayed in the picture. Another failed investment in her life plan. Now that she had the baby, she'd decided she wanted me back. Simple as a basic arithmetic operation in her mind. The final confrontation. "Let me get this straight," I said, my analytical mind processing her words like a complex audit. "You left, met someone else, had his baby, and now you think you can just restore our relationship like a backed-up file?" She broke down, tears falling like corrupted data, claiming she'd made a terrible mistake. She spoke about how she knew we were meant to be together, that I was the one she truly loved. The performance was almost impressive, like watching a perfectly crafted marketing presentation going wrong in real time. Then came the guilt trip subroutines. Endless monologues about the challenges of single motherhood, attempting to paint herself as the victim of her own calculated decisions. She said she was ready to work things out, that she needed my help. Who does she think I am? I wondered, watching this desperate performance unfold on my front porch. The rejection. "You have to live with the decision you made," I stated, my voice carrying the finality of a closed fiscal year. She looked stunned, as if she'd never considered the possibility of a rejected proposal. Her marketing-trained composure cracked, replaced by anger as volatile as a market crash. She shifted tactics like switching between spreadsheet tabs, suddenly becoming hostile. "I could have taken half of everything," she snapped, her professional veneer completely dropped. "I could have claimed this house." The absurdity of her threat made me want to laugh. She was trying to credit herself for not committing financial fraud. "Should I be grateful that you only abandoned me instead of trying to bankrupt me too?" I responded, watching her face cycle through emotions like a loading error message. The years I'd spent questioning myself, feeling inadequate, conducting endless internal audits of our relationship. All of it evaporated as I finally saw her true character displayed on my front porch. The final decision. She wasn't finished. Pacing my porch like a rejected sales pitch, she claimed I'd regret not giving her another chance, that I'd never find someone like her. The desperation in her voice reminded me of clients trying to justify questionable expenses. When she realized I wouldn't budge, she escalated to blaming me for her departure, suggesting none of this would have happened if I'd been more understanding about our fertility issues. "Look," I said, cutting through her circular logic like a clean audit finding. "If you really wanted a child, you could have been honest. You didn't need to create this elaborate deception." She stared at me, speechless, like a caught discrepancy in a financial report. I delivered my final statement. "You're not my responsibility anymore. Neither is he." The clarity of this moment felt like finally balancing a complex account. Everything aligned perfectly. She stood there, processing my words like a failed transaction, before finally accepting that no amount of negotiation would change the outcome. The aftermath of confrontation. When I closed the door, a strange sense of peace washed over me, like a successfully completed audit. I felt no sadness, anger, or even surprise anymore. It was as if all the emotional debugging I'd done over the years had finally paid off, leaving my system clean and optimized. A few days later, Eleanor texted me. Unlike her daughter, she maintained professional courtesy, apologizing for Lexi's behavior and admitting her attempts to reason with her had failed. Eleanor had been a constant support during my darkest spreadsheet days, and I could sense her genuine embarrassment. I replied with a simple, "Thanks for checking in," keeping our final interaction as clean as a well-maintained ledger. Family complications. Through our interconnected social networks, updates about Lexi's situation began populating my feed. She'd moved back in with her parents, her carefully curated Instagram presence showing signs of system failure. The baby's father, the man she'd chosen over our marriage, had completely opted out, like an investor pulling out of a failing venture. Her father, Richard, called me not long after Eleanor's text. His carefully worded request for financial assistance reminded me of clients trying to negotiate payment terms. He spoke about the baby and their financial struggles, invoking memories of when I cared about her. I maintained professional composure while firmly declining, explaining that his daughter's decisions were no longer variables in my equation. Social media fallout. Former mutual connections began reaching out, their messages popping up like notification alerts. Some tried emotional manipulation tactics, suggesting I should give Lexi another chance during her difficult time. Others had the audacity to imply the baby needed a father figure, as if my rejection was causing a system error in their lives. Moving forward, the messages gradually decreased like depreciated assets, finally stopping altogether. Everyone seemed to process what I'd known since that day at my door. I had moved on. My life had been successfully debugged, and I wouldn't be reintegrating corrupted data back into my system. That's when true peace arrived. My life settled into a comfortable routine, as organized as my Excel templates. I had my career, which was thriving after my recent promotion. My friend network had been successfully rebuilt, purged of toxic connections. My home office had become my sanctuary, a place where I could focus on both work and personal growth. Final reflection. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had rediscovered joy in the small things I'd overlooked during my marriage. My evenings were filled with activities I genuinely enjoyed: reading financial journals, cooking meals from scratch, taking evening walks through our quiet suburban streets. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was optimizing my life for maximum efficiency and satisfaction. Sometimes I'd run into someone who knew both of us, and they'd cautiously ask, "What happened with Lexi?" I'd give them the stripped-down version, like a simplified financial statement, and smoothly change the subject. It wasn't that I was hiding anything. I just finally mastered the art of archiving old data without letting it affect my current operations. Last I heard, things weren't processing well for Lexi. She was bouncing between her parents' house and friends' couches, struggling to maintain stable employment. People would occasionally forward me messages about her reaching out to anyone who would listen, some hinting that she still hoped I might recalculate my decision and step in as a father figure to her child. But that possibility had been permanently deleted from my system. Epilogue. I had finally achieved the closure my analytical mind needed. While she dealt with the consequences of her choices, I was experiencing a level of freedom I hadn't known since before she left. I wasn't celebrating her struggles. I was simply content with my own well-balanced life. For the first time since she disappeared, I felt completely debugged and running at optimal performance. And you know what? That was more than enough for this accountant.